There are loves we thought were buried forever in the past. Yet sometimes, on a rainy afternoon, in a fleeting, careless moment, everything returns, as if it had never left. A soft September drizzle kissed the streets of Maplewood. That was the day Aaron Marx, a man who once seemed to have everything, crossed paths again with the woman who had vanished from his life 10 years ago. A letter, 2 children with eyes startlingly like his, and a secret that could change everything about the future. This isn't just a love story, it's a journey through forgiveness, loss, and finding one another again, set in the gentle heart of America, in a small town called Maplewood. If you believe that true love will always find its way back home, then come with me on this journey. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss a single chapter of The Return Back to Maplewood. Now then, let's begin with Chapter 1, Autumn Rain in Maplewood. The first rain of the season poured over Maplewood on a quiet September afternoon. Raindrops slid down the window glass, merging with the soft glow of the streetlights that had come on early, creating a scene both real and dreamlike. The small town nestled among Vermont's hills still kept its old-time charm. Main Street ran along a narrow creek, lined with rows of red brick buildings, an old bookstore, a flower shop, and a cafe with a moss-green awning. The rich scent of roasted coffee blended into the damp air, slowing everything down, softening it. Aaron Marx parked in front of Main Street Cafe. He took off his glasses and exhaled softly. Another long day: meetings, contracts, handshakes heavy with calculation. Stepping out of his sleek car, his shoes tapped lightly on the wet pavement. Tall and poised in a charcoal coat, tie slightly loosened, his hair damp with mist, he drew a few glances from inside the cafe. Some recognized him, the youngest CEO in the history of Marx Holdings, heir to the family name that had built Maplewood over a century ago. But no one could see the hollow space behind that calm exterior. Aaron offered a polite smile, a slight nod, then chose a table by the window. He didn't want a conversation. Outside, rain fell softly. The wind wove into the quiet notes of a piano playing in the background. Sometimes the streetlight caught his face, lighting up those green eyes, bright but distant, like the surface of a lake stirred by an autumn breeze. At a corner table, a young woman bent over a stack of sketches. The warm light fell on her small, nimble hands as they moved quickly across the page. Her brown hair was tied back, with a few loose strands brushing her cheek. A pale shirt, sleeves rolled up, graphite dust on her wrist. The sight made Aaron pause. Amid the noise of his world, that image was still serene, like a melody from a song he'd forgotten. A server approached. "What can I get for you, sir?" "Hot latte, low sugar," he said quietly, his eyes never leaving the woman. She seemed to be working on an architectural plan. The curved lines and precise symbols gave it away. Each stroke showed patience and passion, qualities rare in people who chased only profit. Suddenly, her papers slid off the table and scattered to the floor. The soft rustle made a few heads turn. She bent down quickly, gathering them. Aaron rose and crossed the room in an instant. "Let me," he said, his voice low and steady. She looked up. For a moment, every sound in the cafe vanished. Her light brown eyes reflected the dim light, startled, then quickly warmed with a smile. "Thank you. I'm so clumsy." He knelt to help, picking up damp pages. "It's all right. I think the first rain makes everyone a little clumsy." She laughed softly, taking the sketches back. "I keep telling myself to get a bigger table. Coffee and blueprints don't get along very well." "Unless the blueprint is beautiful," he replied, eyes catching a corner of the page marked Maplewood Station Restoration Project. "You're working on the old station restoration?" She nodded, surprised. "You know about that?" Aaron smiled. "I'm the one who signed the funding." She froze for a beat. "Then, you're Aaron Marx," he said gently, without arrogance. A flicker of hesitation passed through her eyes. Everyone in Maplewood knew that name. But instead of awkwardness or deference, she smiled. "I'm May Bennett, lead architect for the dome restoration." She offered her hand, small, cold from the rain. He took it, and warmth spread between them. Something familiar, something distant, as if they had met once in an old dream. They stood there for a quiet second before May gathered her papers. He stepped back, his gaze soft. "Have you been here long?" she asked. "Just got in. The rain made me change course, needed somewhere dry. This town rains all through September. she smiled. "It's like it wants to make people stay a little longer. Then maybe I should thank the rain today." The air between them stilled for a beat. A drop fell from the awning, breaking the silence. Everything slowed, tender, cinematic. They talked for a while about architecture, about old buildings brought back to life. Aaron said little, but when he did, his voice was calm and warm, and May felt strangely at ease. She found herself telling him about childhood dreams, about sketching rooftops with broken pencils. When the rain stopped, she gathered her things. He looked outside, then back at her. "Can I drive you home? Roads are still wet." She shook her head, a faint smile playing on her lips. "I like walking after the rain. Maplewood is prettier than." "Then let me walk with you. Call it thanks for the conversation." She hesitated, then nodded. The bell chimed softly as they stepped out. The air was cool, the streets gleaming with reflections. They walked side by side in silence for a while. Aaron caught a hint of her scent, wood and vanilla, and found himself wishing the road would never end. At the small lane leading toward the old district, she stopped. "I live nearby. Thank you for walking with me." "Thank you," he said, his eyes lingering. "I hope we meet again at the Maplewood station." Her eyes lit up. "Maybe we will. The project's far from done." He watched her disappear among the trees. A light breeze swept through, carrying the smell of rain and coffee. Aaron stood still, heart quietly stirring something familiar, something new. He didn't yet know that at that very moment, his life had begun to turn toward warmth, and toward challenges he couldn't yet name. The narrator's voice lowered. "Sometimes, the people who change our lives step in quietly, on an afternoon that feels utterly ordinary." Days later, Maplewood woke under gentle autumn sunlight. Golden leaves were scattered on the sidewalks, and every morning, Aaron found himself driving past the old station under the excuse of checking progress. He told no one, perhaps not even himself, that it was more than that. But each time he saw May bent over her drawings, hair tousled by the wind, his heart tightened with a feeling he thought he'd long lost. The third time he came, she spotted him first. "Rechecking progress," she teased. "Just wanted to see how the project's going. I hear the architecture team's doing wonders." "Oh? Who told you that?" "My project supervisor," he said with a soft smile. "But I wanted to see the person who's giving the station its soul." She laughed. "You exaggerate. I'm just fixing a small part. Sometimes, it's the small parts that carry the soul." She fell quiet for a moment, her eyes softening. He realized he wanted to protect that gentleness, to shield it from the noisy world outside. Their meetings became a quiet habit, a morning coffee, a few minutes under the station's awning. Aaron soon realized May was unlike anyone he'd known. She spoke little, but with depth, and smiled rarely, but sincerely. Each time he saw her, the world seemed to slow down. The weight of power and legacy lifted, if only for a moment. One afternoon, they walked together around the lake park. Maple leaves swirled around them. The air smelled of damp earth. Aaron told her about his father, the man who had passed years ago, and the expectations he'd left behind. May spoke of Aunt Edna, the gentle woman who raised her in a small wooden house by the woods. Their words flowed easily, like a stream with no need for effort or embellishment. When the sun touched the tree line, they stopped by the water. The lake shimmered orange with the fading light. Aaron murmured, "It's been a long time since I felt this calm." May tilted her head. "I thought someone like you would have everything to feel calm about." "No, I have many things, but peace isn't one of them." She looked at him with quiet empathy. "Maybe peace is something we have to find, not something we're born with." He met her gaze, the light flickering in her eyes like a tiny flame. "Then maybe I've just found it." The words hung between them, fragile and warm. She looked away, a shy smile touching her lips. That evening, after she left, Aaron stood watching her silhouette fade. His hand still held the trace of that fleeting warmth. At Mark's estate, the grand house glowed with cold light. He poured a glass of wine and stared out over the garden. Her image replayed in his mind, her smile, her eyes, her voice, a feeling he couldn't bring himself to silence. Across town, in a small apartment above the bookstore, May sat by her window. The rain had started again, tapping softly on the roof. The air smelled of old pages and jasmine tea, Aunt Edna's favorite. On her desk lay new sketches, but her pencil trembled slightly. The image of Aaron lingered, those green eyes, that gaze that saw through her, yet never intruded. She sighed. Don't dream too much, May, she whispered, but the heart never listens. The next morning, when she arrived at the station, Aaron was already there. You're late, he said, amused. Didn't expect a CEO to have this much free time. I'm only free when I want to see someone. She laughed, trying to hide her surprise. He handed her a cup. Cappuccino, no sugar. You said you like it pure. You remembered. There are some things you shouldn't forget. A breeze scattered the papers. She caught them, glancing up at him as if questions hovered behind her eyes. You make it easy to forget the world out there. The world can wait, he said softly. This moment can't. May said nothing. Something inside her opened warm, yet edged with fear. She knew the distance between them wasn't small, but when she looked into his eyes, she understood. Sometimes, the heart doesn't ask permission from reason. The sun broke through the station's dome, spilling golden light over them. The moment glowed gentle, like a promise. The narrator's voice lowered again, tender as breath. That was the last afternoon before autumn truly arrived. And they, two people who seemed to belong to different worlds, touched destiny itself through a glance, a smile, and a cup of coffee on a rain-washed Main Street. The next morning, Maplewood glowed under a pale golden Sunday. After the night's rain, the sky seemed freshly washed. Dewdrops clung to the rooftops and branches, catching the thin morning light. From the southern edge of town came the steady, low hum of the early train, the same sound that had breathed life into Maplewood for generations. May Bennett slipped on her cardigan and walked down the narrow path toward the old station, the place she had spent months restoring. To her, it wasn't just a job, but a memory. She had sat here as a child with Aunt Edna, counting passing trains and dreaming of faraway places. When the restoration project was approved, she accepted immediately. Salary be damned. That morning, the station was quiet in the early light. The old red brick walls were being scraped clean, scaffolding framed the central dome, and the air smelled of fresh wood, paint, and the faint aroma of coffee from the little cart outside. May had just opened her sketchbook to jot down notes when she heard footsteps behind her. Your coffee, came the low, familiar voice. She turned. Aaron Marx stood there, sleeves rolled up, holding two paper cups, a faint smile on his lips. You're here again? She asked, trying not to smile. Don't tell me you're annoyed. No, just surprised. Does the CEO of Maplewood have this much free time? Only when there's a good reason. He handed her a cup. No sugar. I remember you like it that way. She took it, warmth seeping through her fingers. You have a good memory. Oh, there are some things one shouldn't forget, he said, his eyes meeting hers gentle, yet enough to make her heartbeat quicken. She turned away, focusing on her sketches. I think the station will be finished in 2 months if the weather's kind. Do you ever think that when it's done, Maplewood might come alive again, like it used to? I hope so. A town is only beautiful when people still want to stay, or want to come back. He looked at her, his tone softening. Would you come back if you left? She glanced up, startled. I haven't thought about leaving. Good, he smiled, because I'm not ready for anyone to leave yet. The playful line made her pause. Sunlight streamed through the station's windows, catching his green eyes and turning them to glass. Something in that look made her feel she was stepping into a place she couldn't quite return from. In the days that followed, they saw each other often at the station. Sometimes he brought coffee, and sometimes pastries from a small bakery on Main Street. Work slowly became an excuse to stay close. May drew. Aaron watched occasionally, asking simple questions. Why did you choose this job? What's your favorite part of the station? And she always answered with quiet passion, because it tells the story of time, without needing words. One windy afternoon, they stood on the wooden upper deck, gazing down at the moss-covered tracks. May whispered, I like standing here, watching trains pass. It makes the world feel so big. He followed her gaze. And I think, if someone's waiting at the end of the tracks, the world suddenly feels small. She smiled. Is anyone waiting for you? Not yet. But if there ever is, I won't make her wait long. They fell silent. The wind hummed through the beams above, and the distant train echoed softly, a peace so rare, neither wanted to move. That night, back in her small apartment, May brewed tea and opened her laptop, but couldn't focus on her designs. Aaron's image kept returning, the way he spoke, the way he listened, the way his hand brushed the coffee cup against hers. Don't dream, May, she whispered to herself. He's from another world. But the more she tried to quiet it, the brighter the flame burned. Across town, in his study at the Marx estate, Aaron sat, surrounded by open files, his mind elsewhere. A cup of cold latte rested beside him as he replayed her words. A town is only beautiful when people still want to come back. He realized for the first time he no longer wanted to leave Maplewood. Autumn arrived, and golden leaves lined Main Street. The air carried an incredible, gentle scent. The station neared completion, the dome restored, the old bricks polished to life. Each time Aaron came, he saw not just progress, but renewal, not only in the building, but in the eyes of the woman bringing it back. One Friday evening, he arrived at dusk. May was still there, alone, painting the trim of a high window. "Working overtime," he called. "Just finishing this part. It might rain tomorrow." He stepped closer, glancing up at her on the ladder. "Be careful. I'd hate for Maplewood to lose its most important architect." She smiled down. "I'm careful, Lee." But just then, her brush slipped and fell. Aaron caught it mid-air, though paint splattered across his sleeve. "Seems I shouldn't be so trusting," he said, half laughing. She giggled. "I'll buy you a new shirt. Just give me another coffee instead." "Coffee's easy. Are you sure you want the person who spilled paint to buy it?" "As long as it's you." May froze for a moment. There was something in his eyes that made her turn away, afraid someone might see what she was feeling. That evening, they walked together through the park behind the station. The sunset spread gold across the lake, wind stirring the last maple leaves. "When my father was alive," Aaron said quietly, "he used to bring me here. He said this was the one place that made him feel Maplewood's soul." May listened, his voice low and threaded with something like longing. "And your mother?" she asked softly. A hesitated. "She's different. She lives for the family name, for what Marx means more than for herself." She nodded. "People forget that happiness doesn't live in a surname. It lives in what you choose." He looked at her for a long moment. "You're right. I worry that someday when I finally have everything, I'll lose what matters most." They sat quietly, watching the ripples on the lake. Then, slowly, he reached for her hand, not in haste, just a simple, steady touch that made her heart race. She didn't pull away. By the time the sun slipped behind the trees, they were still there, saying nothing. The sound of crickets and a faraway train became the quiet soundtrack to a moment they both knew they would never forget. That night, when Aaron returned home, his mother, Vivian Marx, was waiting in the sitting room. "You're late," she said evenly. "At the station again. I was checking the project." Vivian sipped her tea, eyes sharp. "I hear you've been there quite often. What's so important to check?" He paused, then answered, "Someone who works there." "The girl?" Her voice cooled. He met her gaze. "Her name is May Bennett. I respect her." Vivian set her cup down with a faint clink. "Aaron, you must understand some people don't belong in our world." "Our world?" he said quietly. "I don't think happiness needs a passport, Mother." She started to respond, but he stood, his tone calm. "If you want me to live like Father did, obedient, trading love for duty, then I'm sorry. I won't repeat that." Vivian watched him leave, anger and fear flickering in her eyes. Somewhere deep down, she felt a tremor of unease that this woman, May Bennett, might undo everything she had built. That night, in her small Main Street apartment, May lay awake, listening to the late-night train. She thought of his hand holding hers, of the way his voice softened when he spoke of peace. A quiet joy filled her chest, and beneath it, a shadow of worry. She didn't know that beyond that fragile happiness, a silent storm was already beginning to form. The narrator's voice softened, slow and warm. "There are moments in life when we forget the past and the future, when all we know is that, in that single heartbeat, our heart belongs to someone. But love, even as it blooms, begins to test the courage of those who dare to hold it." Well, October came, and Maplewood slipped quietly into its early winter chill. Fallen maple leaves covered the streets, and the morning light spread across town like a veil of silver mist. The old train station was nearly complete, its restored dome gleaming, rows of new windows catching the Sunday. That day, May Bennett didn't go to the site. A heavy cream-colored envelope lay on her desk, embossed, gold-lettered. The annual Marx Foundation Gala held at Marx Estate, 7 p.m., Saturday. No, At the bottom, handwritten in ink, "I want you to come. A." She read it over and over, her heart beating fast. The Marx Gala was the grandest event of the year, drawing financiers, politicians, and every notable name in the Northeast. She had never stepped into that world. The thought of walking beside Aaron in such a setting filled her with both excitement and dread. That afternoon, she stood before her mirror in the small apartment. Her navy blue dress draped softly over her shoulders. Simple, elegant. Aunt Edna's words echoed in her mind. "You don't need to be dazzling to be noticed, dear. You need to be sincere to be remembered." She smiled faintly, dabbed on a trace of sandalwood perfume, and stepped out. A black car waited on Main Street. The driver opened the door with a courteous nod. Her pulse quickened as the vehicle turned onto the cobblestone road leading to Mark's estate. The mansion rose among maple trees like an old-world castle. Hundreds of lights shimmered across the lake out front. Guests in tuxedos and gowns drifted through the gates, their laughter mingling with the smooth rhythm of jazz that spilled from inside. When May stepped out, several heads turned. She didn't belong to that world, but her quiet grace made her stand out even more. Aaron appeared at the top of the steps, sharp in a black tuxedo, his face aglow under the chandeliers. As he descended toward her, that gentle smile made her heartbeat stumble. "You came," he said, his voice low and warm. "Are you sure I should have? I feel like I walked into the wrong world." "You didn't," he said, extending his hand. "From now on, my world has you in it." She placed her hand in his strong, steady, and as they entered together, every murmur, every curious glance seemed to follow. Aaron didn't care. He introduced her to colleagues and friends, and each time he said, "This is May Bennett." There was a quiet pride in his tone. The music swelled soft and classic. He leaned close. "Dance with me?" May smiled nervously. She had never danced at a gala, but under the golden lights, with his hand resting gently on her back, her hesitation dissolved. They moved together through the crowd, the brush of her dress against the floor, the hum of laughter fading into the distance. Her heart beat in rhythm with the music, and when he whispered near her ear, "I've never been this happy," she realized she was smiling softly, uncontrollably. But across the room, another gaze cold and sharp as a blade watched them. Vivienne Marx. She stood tall, her silver-gray gown gleaming like moonlight, her hair swept up in regal perfection. Her smile was poised, but when her eyes shifted from her son to May, it tightened a curve as thin as glass. After the dance, Aaron led May outside to the garden. Lanterns swayed in the crisp air, their reflections trembling on the lake. They stood by the railing, side by side, silence wrapping around them like a secret. "You know," she said softly, "I used to dream about parties like this, but now that I'm here, I just feel out of place." "You don't need to be like them," he said, squeezing her hand gently. "I'm here because of you." In that moment, footsteps sounded behind them. Vivienne appeared. "Are you making your guest feel out of place, Aaron?" Her voice was calm, but edged. He turned. "Mother, I want you to meet May Bennett." Vivienne's smile was polite, calm. "We've heard a lot about you, Miss Bennett. Your station project has drawn quite the attention." "Thank you," May replied, steady but careful. "I only played a small part." "Oh, but sometimes," Vivienne said, her tone silken, "it's the smallest part that brings the whole structure down, isn't it?" The words landed lightly, but they stung. Aaron's hand tightened around May's. "Mother," he said, voice calm but firm. "She's someone I care about." Vivienne's eyes flickered between pride and disappointment. "We'll talk later, Aaron." She turned and walked away, her perfume lingering cold, elegant, final. May stood still, watching her leave. "I don't think she likes me." "No one could like you, May." "That's not true," she said softly. She tried to smile, but unease had already crept in. The party ended late. After most guests had gone, May stood before the tall mirror in the hallway. The lights were dimmed now. Her reflection flickered faintly against the glass. Vivienne's expression still haunted her mind. Aaron appeared behind her. "What are you thinking?" "That I don't belong here," she whispered. "I don't have what they have." He reached out, resting his hand gently on her shoulder. "You have something they never will." "What's that?" "Honesty." She turned to him. Their eyes met no words, just quiet understanding. Then he leaned down and kissed her. Their first kiss soft, slow, yet charged with everything unsaid. When they finally broke apart, she could barely breathe. "Aaron, I know," he murmured, "but I can't pretend I don't feel this." "Oh." Outside, the wind swept through the maples, leaves whispering across the stone terrace. In that vast, golden-lit room, there were only two of them, and a moment that felt suspended outside of time. Later that night, in her small apartment, May sat by the window, her hands still trembling. She didn't regret it, but something inside her stirred, fragile and uncertain. She knew the most beautiful things in life are often the most delicate, and at Mark's estate, Vivian sat alone in her room, a glass of red wine before her, and an old photograph of her late husband, the man who had once chosen love beneath his family's pride. She whispered, "My son is making the same mistake, falling for someone who doesn't belong to our world." Her eyes darkened, and a thin, knowing smile appeared. "Not this time." "Oh." The narrator's voice fell low and steady. Just when love touches its brightest peak, the invisible hands of the past begin to tighten. And sometimes, what destroys love isn't the lack of it, but the walls built by those too afraid to lose their power. Winter arrived quietly in Maplewood, as if the town itself were holding its breath. From her small apartment window, May watched the grey sky draped in fog. A silken veil hung over rooftops. In the distance, the low whistle of a train echoed the same familiar sound that had accompanied her through so many mornings at the old station. On the table, her phone buzzed. A message from Aaron. "I have to fly to London for a week to meet the board. When I get back, there's something I need to tell you." Her hand trembled slightly as she reread it. 1 week, not long, but enough to make her feel the absence. Since the night of the gala, they had been almost inseparable evenings by the lake, late talks in her small apartment, quiet moments of peace within his restless life. But somewhere in that peace, she still felt the shadow of Vivian Marx, the cold stare from that night, lingering like frost she couldn't shake. That afternoon, Aaron came to walk with her one last time around the frozen Maplewood lake. The air was crisp, thin ice glimmered on the water's surface, and the wind carried the promise of snow. "I'll call every night," he said, his fingers entwined with hers. "I know. And when I'm back, there's something important I need to say. Something I've held on to too long." She smiled, eyes glinting softly, voice barely above a whisper. "I think I already know." "Do you?" "Just a guess." He leaned forward and pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Then keep guessing until I can say it out loud." They stood there for a long time. The wind swept over the lake, dry and biting. "Be careful, Aaron," she said quietly. He smiled. "I'm not afraid of the snow, only of losing you." When he drove away, May stood watching the car fade into the mist. Happiness filled her chest, but so did an ache, a quiet warning that something beneath the calm was shifting, like water moving under winter ice. 2 days later, Vivian Marx came to her door. That afternoon, Maplewood was white with the first snowstorm of the season. May had just returned from the station, still in her coat, when a sharp knock sounded. She opened the door. Vivian stood there, long coat, leather gloves, eyes cold and bright as the sky outside. "Good afternoon, Miss Bennett," she said softly. "I hope you have a few minutes." May let her in, though her heart tightened. The small apartment was warm, but Vivian's presence seemed to pull the air out of the room. "Tea?" May asked, forcing politeness. "No, thank you." Vivian removed her gloves, set them neatly on the table, and met May's eyes. "I know Aaron is in London. He thinks I don't keep track, but I always know where my son is and who he's with." Her voice was calm, each word cutting like cold steel. May stood still. "If you have something to say, please say it." "I will," Vivian replied. "You're an intelligent woman, so that I won't insult you, but you've gone too far in a story that cannot end well." May's voice shook slightly. "I love Aaron." "I don't doubt that," Vivian said. "But love doesn't sustain a legacy, and my son carries a name that cannot be swayed by emotion." May held her gaze. "Emotion is what makes us human, Mrs. Marx." Vivian's smile was thin as a blade. "Emotion makes people weak, and the weak don't last long in our world." She paused, then continued, each word deliberate. "I didn't come to argue. I came to offer you a choice. Leave Maplewood, start a new life. I'll make sure you never want for anything. Or stay, and I will make sure everything you have your job. Your reputation is gone within a week." May's face drained of color. You're threatening me. I'm protecting my son, Vivian said evenly. He's on the rise. A scandal with a small-town architect would ruin him. I won't allow that. For a moment, May couldn't speak. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, Vivian cut in. I once stood where you stand, and I know how it ends. She reached into her bag and set an envelope on the table. There's a firm in Chicago ready to hire you. Your expenses will be covered. Leave before Aaron returns. May stared at the envelope, tears filling her eyes but refusing to fall. And him? What will you tell him? That you chose your career, Vivian said calmly, and that your love regrettably was just a fleeting mistake. She rose, pulling on her gloves. You have 2 days. Then she was gone, leaving a trail of perfume and winter air. When the door shut, May sank into a chair. The sound of the wind outside blended with the frantic beat of her heart. On the table, the white envelope lay like a weight heavy, merciless. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the snow fall in silence. Aaron's voice echoed in her memory. I'm only afraid of losing you. And she knew if he came back to find her ruined, humiliated, he would fight, and Vivian would destroy them both. At dawn, she went to the station. The workers greeted her with surprise. Her eyes were tired, dark circles beneath them, but she worked as if nothing had changed. She walked through the old halls, running her fingers along the brick walls. This was the place she loved most, the place where their love began. And now, it would be the place she'd have to leave behind. That evening, she sat down to write. Her hands trembled so badly the ink ran crooked. Aaron, you said you had something to tell me when you got back. I have something too, but I don't dare to wait. I've been offered a job in Chicago. It's a good opportunity, and I need to go for my own future. Thank you for everything. I'll always cherish the time we had. Please don't look for me. Don't try to change my mind. Believe this is what I want. May. She sealed the letter, her tears smudging his name. That night, she packed a single suitcase, a few clothes, her sketchbook, and the photo they'd taken at the station. She stood for a long time in the doorway of her small home before turning off the light. Before dawn, she walked to Mark's estate. Snow blanketed the driveway, the gate lamps glowing faintly. She placed the envelope on the front steps and whispered, I'm sorry. Oh so. Then she turned away, leaving a trail of deep footprints in the snow, the path of a woman walking away from love to save it from destruction. A week later, when Aaron returned, the snow still covered Maplewood. He drove straight to her apartment empty. The neighbors said she'd left suddenly, leaving no address. Panic rose in him as he sped to Mark's estate. On the front steps, the envelope waited. He opened it and froze. Don't look for me. This is what I want. Who? The words sliced through him. He sank to his knees, snow melting on his hair, his hands shaking. Inside the mansion, behind the curtain, Vivian watched in silence. Her expression wavered anger, guilt, resolve all tangled in her eyes. Someday, she whispered, you'll thank me. But when Aaron looked up again, his face had changed. The light in his green eyes was gone, replaced by something hollow, cold. His voice broke as he muttered, no one could have made her disappear, unless it was someone in this house. From that moment on, Aaron Marx's heart turned to stone. The narrator's voice fell, low and smoky. And so, their first love ended in the heart of Maplewood's winter, not with betrayal, not with anger, but with a desperate act of love. One left to save it, one stayed to mourn it. And from that day on, winter never truly melted inside their hearts. End. 10 years is long enough to forget a memory, but far too short to erase a wound. For Aaron Marx, time didn't flow, it froze. He entered his 30s quietly, like a winter lake sealed in ice. Maplewood revered him, the man who had turned Marx Holdings into a national name, founded scholarships, funded museums, and rescued the town from decline. People called him the pride of Vermont, but no one knew that his office light stayed on long after midnight, and that in the bottom drawer of his desk, he still kept a small velvet box with a ring that had never been given. Every season, he returned to the old station. Standing in the perfectly restored hall polished brick, clear glass, he would stare at the timetable board, as if waiting for someone to step off an invisible train. No one ever came. He tried searching. Once, twice, and even hired investigators. Rumors said she had moved to Chicago, then disappeared. Every trace ended there. By the third year, he stopped looking, but not a single day passed without her name in his thoughts. On quiet winter nights, when snow piled on the roof, he would sit alone in the living room, the TV murmuring to fill the silence, a glass of bourbon in hand. The scent of the drink mixed with lavender, the fragrance she used to wear, and his chest ached as if it was still that first night without her. People admired his strength. He smiled, thanked them, and went on living as though loneliness were simply part of his design. At the centennial ceremony of Maplewood Station, he was invited to cut the ribbon. Cameras flashed, applause rose, and under the bright lights, he smiled for the perfect shot. But as he glanced up, he caught his reflection in the glass dome, the face of a man who had everything, except the light in his eyes. Outside, snow fell silently, and through the wind, he swore he heard a faint echo of laughter. Her laughter, the girl who once said, "Maplewood is most beautiful after the rain." He turned around. No one was there. Across the country, May Bennett was living a quiet, steady life. She rented a small wooden house on the outskirts of Ohio, near a tiny art district. Initially, she took on freelance design work for cafes and small shops. Later, she opened her own studio, Hope and Felix Design, named after the two little souls she called to each morning. She had twins, a boy and a girl. Felix had deep green eyes, unmistakably his. Hope had soft brown hair, the color of Maplewood at dusk. May poured every ounce of her love into them, all the tenderness she once saved for Aaron. She taught them to draw, to smile, to be kind. And every night, when she read them stories, her voice trembled at the parts about the brave father who went far away. Felix would ask, "Mom, who is my dad?" And she would answer, softly as wind, "He's a good man, very far away, but if you look up at the sky, you'll see his eyes there." She wasn't lying, but she wasn't telling the whole truth either. She was protecting the peace of two small hearts. Her career grew. Her name appeared in a few local architecture magazines. However, she refused to give interviews and avoided the cameras. When reporters asked, "Weren't you part of the Maplewood Station project?" she would smile and say, "It was so long ago, I hardly remember." At night, after the twins fell asleep, she'd sit at her desk, open an old notebook marked with his handwriting, and sometimes cry, not the kind that breaks you, but the quiet kind that seeps into the soul like rain into the earth. 10 years passed. Felix and Hope grew, each bearing echoes of their father. When Felix ran across the lawn, his half-smile was so like Aaron's at 28, gentle, steady, luminous. May knew she couldn't hide the truth forever, but she wasn't ready yet. On rainy nights, she'd sit by the window, listening to the whisper of distant trains. She would wonder, "Do you still think of me, wherever you are?" And then, she'd smile faintly, "It's enough to know you once did." That spring, the 10th year, Maplewood held a memorial for the founder of Marx Holdings, Aaron's father. The newspapers showed Aaron standing solemnly before the grave, his face calm, unreadable. But anyone who looked closely could see it, the quiet ache in his eyes that time had never taken away. That afternoon, after the ceremony, he returned to the station. A drizzle fell, the kind of rain he once called the rain of remembrance. Though, he stood beneath the canopy, watching a train glide by and disappear into the mist. He whispered, "If you're still out there, May, I hope you know I never forgot." He didn't know that, hundreds of miles away, a woman was whispering the exact words as she closed her sketchbook. That same year, May received a letter from Maplewood. The envelope bore the seal of the Marx Foundation. Her breath caught at the sight of the name. Inside, the message read, "Aunt Edna Pickle, your last living relative, has passed away. Funeral service to be held at Maplewood Cemetery." The letter sat in her hands for a long time. Aunt Edna, the woman who raised her, the only one who knew about her pregnancy 10 years ago, was gone. May knew she had to return. That night, after the children had fallen asleep, she gazed at them for a long while. Felix lay on his side, clutching his stuffed bear, his lashes shadowing eyes the color of spring lakes. She brushed his hair back and whispered, "Maplewood, we're going home." The morning she arrived at Maplewood Station, a fine mist covered the air. Almost nothing had changed. Main Street, the flower shop, the little cafe with its moss-green awning. Only she had changed, older, steadier, carrying with her 2 children who bore the blood of the man she once loved with everything she had. Felix looked up at the restored station and exclaimed, "Mom, this place is beautiful." May smiled. "It's where I used to work, back when you were just a speck of dust in the wind." Hope tugged at her hand. "Did Dad know this place too?" May hesitated. "Maybe," she said softly. "Maybe he once stood right here." A breeze passed through, carrying the scent of wet brick and rain. And in that moment, May felt her heart race, just as it had 10 years ago, the day she first met him under the season's first rain. Across town, Aaron Marx had no idea that in just a few days, he would see the woman he thought the world had taken from him. And when he did, 10 years of silence would shatter like glass. The narrator's voice deepened, decadent and wistful. 10 years without letters, without a single word, yet some loves never rot beneath the weight of time. They only sleep, waiting to be called back to life. And when destiny whispers their name, no heart can pretend not to hear. That morning, Maplewood was still wrapped in mist. Spring had just passed, yet the air still carried the chill of late winter. The streets were quiet, save for the soft chime of wind bells outside the bakery at the corner. A silver car rolled slowly down Main Street and stopped in front of a red brick building, Maplewood Station, the place that had once witnessed both a beginning and a farewell. The car door opened. May Bennett stepped out, wrapped in a beige sweater, her face calm but her eyes heavy with old winds. From the other side, 2 small children jumped down, each holding a tiny suitcase. "We're here, Mom?" Hope asked, her voice light as glass. "Yes, this is Maplewood where I grew up." End of flu. Felix looked around, his eyes bright. "It's smaller than I imagined, but warmer than you think," she smiled, bending to take their hands. "We won't stay long, just long enough to say goodbye to someone." A breeze drifted past, carrying the scent of wisteria and damp earth. She looked up at the station's dome, the one she had once drawn, once loved, once left behind. Every brick a heartbeat, every pane of glass, a reflection of the woman she had been 10 years ago. That afternoon, Aunt Edna's funeral took place at Maplewood Cemetery. The old oaks rustled softly under a pale sky. Kneeling before the simple gravestone, Edna Bennett, the one who sowed love. May laid down a bouquet of white tulips. She whispered, "I'm home, Aunt Edna." Beside her, Felix and Hope stood silently, hand in hand. "Goodbye, Grandma," Hope murmured. May adjusted her daughter's collar, inhaling sharply as tears welled up. She hadn't yet wiped them away when she heard footsteps behind her. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to intrude." The voice was low, rough and achingly familiar. May froze. She turned. Just a few yards away stood Aaron Marx, dressed in a black coat, his face solemn and his eyes stunned. For a moment, the world went silent. The wind paused. The birds hushed, only her heartbeat filled the air. 10 years, an entire lifetime, collapsed into a single gaze. He hadn't changed much, only that the green in his eyes had darkened, holding a whole sky she had once dreamed of and lost. Aaron took a step closer. May. Her name escaped his lips, like a memory surfacing from years of silence. She trembled. "Aaron." They stood there, saying nothing. Tears slipped down her face, not from pain, but from something larger than joy or grief. The wonder of seeing someone you once thought gone forever. The children turned, curious. Felix tilted his head, those unmistakable green eyes catching the light the same shade as Aaron's. Aaron looked down at them, breath-catching. The boy's face, his own face, reborn, hit him like a wave. "There," he couldn't finish. May bit her lip. "Felix, Hope, this is Mr. Marx, an old friend of Mom's." "Hi, sir," Hope said sweetly. Felix, quieter, studied him. "Did you know Mom a long time ago?" Aaron swallowed hard. "A very long time, before you were born." "No?" Their eyes met, and in that glance, no words were needed. He knew. And she knew he knew. A decade of silence folded into one fragile, breathless second. The wind picked up, scattering petals over the grass. "I never thought I'd see you again," Aaron said softly. "Neither did I," she whispered. "Not here, anyway." They both smiled, the kind of smile that comes after surviving everything, when all that's left is understanding. "We should talk," he said quietly. May nodded. "Not here." And later that afternoon, they sat in Main Street Cafe, the same cafe where it all began. Almost nothing had changed. The same walls, the same amber lights, only a new barista behind the counter, and a vase of dried flowers where they had once sat together. Silence stretched between them, heavy but familiar. Aaron studied her. Time had brushed lightly across her face a few fine lines, a calm strength, still the same eyes, still the same smile that made his heart falter. "I came here often," he said finally, voice deep, steady. "But no one remembered you. It was as if you'd never existed." May's hands tightened around her cup. Maybe that was the easiest way to exist, by being forgotten. "I couldn't forget." She looked up, voice trembling. "Aaron, there are things better left untouched. That past is over." "No, May." His voice cracked, then steadied. "It never ended. You left without a word. Do you have any idea what 10 years felt like? You don't understand. Then help me understand." His tone rose, then softened. "Just tell me why." She stared at him for a long time. Tears threatened, but she managed to hold them back. "I had to leave, Aaron. If I'd stayed, everything you had would have fallen apart. Your mother, she—" The words broke off as Hope came running with 2 mugs of cocoa. "Mom, can Felix and I get more marshmallows?" May wiped her eyes quickly. "Sure, honey. Just don't spill, okay?" The twins skipped away. Aaron watched them, then turned back, his voice trembling. "They're mine, aren't they?" She nodded. A tear fell, the last one she'd held in for years. He took a deep breath, his body shaking with both collapse and relief. "Where have you been?" "Ohio. A small town. I opened a design studio." He gave a hollow laugh. "And I lived like a man without a soul." They sat there as twilight sank through the windows, the light glancing off their faces. Neither spoke again. Some silences are too sacred to fill. That night, May brought the children back to Aunt Edna's old house on the edge of town, a wooden home tucked among pines. The lights glowed warm. The scent of timber soothed her heart. Felix sat sketching at the table, Hope cutting colored paper into cards. "I like it here," Hope said. "It feels like a fairy tale." May smiled. "It was once the place where I was loved the most." Outside, rain began to fall. Through the window, she saw headlights stop at the gate. "Aaron." She opened the door. "You came?" "I had to. I can't let this end with half the truth." They sat by the fireplace, its flames flickering on their faces, drawing the years backward. "I want to know," he said. "Why did you really leave?" "Because of your mother," she whispered. "She came to see me. She said if I didn't leave, she'd destroy my career and yours." He went still. "I didn't believe her at first," May continued softly. "But when she said she'd once lost the man she loved for the sake of the Marx name, I knew she meant it. I couldn't risk your future. And by then, I was already pregnant." Aaron leaned forward, taking her hands. "God, May, I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I just knew that if I stayed, you'd lose everything, and I couldn't be the reason you hated your own life." He shook his head, tears streaking down his face. "I would have given up the whole empire if it meant keeping you and them." "You were young then," she said gently. "You didn't know yet what truly mattered." "I do now." She met his gaze, no anger left, only sorrow, and a love that had endured too long in silence. "Do you still want me to come back?" she asked, her voice trembling. He smiled through the tears. "No, because you never really left." Outside, the wind howled against the windows, and the rain thickened. The children ran out from the next room, laughing, wrapping their arms around their mother. Aaron watched them, eyes glistening. Felix looked up shyly. "Sir, do you like pancakes?" Aaron laughed through the ache. "I love pancakes." "Then Mom will make some tomorrow," Hope cheered. May nodded, voice barely steady. "Tomorrow, Late that night, after the children were asleep, Aaron stood to leave. She walked him to the door. "You'll come back, won't you?" she asked softly. "I never left," he said, placing a hand over his heart. "Not from here." As his car disappeared down the road, May stood in the doorway, the rain finally easing. From somewhere far away, the sound of a train echoed old, familiar, and warm. She looked up at the grey sky and whispered, "Welcome home, Aaron." "Oh." The narrator's voice deepened, gentle as a closing sigh. After 10 long years, they were once again in the same town. In Maplewood, spring seemed to begin anew. But beneath every calm surface, there are always waves, and when love returns from its slumber, it demands the courage to face the truth. The next morning, Maplewood woke beneath a shimmering light after rain. Drops of water still clung to the oak leaves outside Aunt Edna's porch, glinting like tiny crystals. In the small kitchen, the scent of pancakes filled the air, mingling with the laughter of two children. Erin sat at the old wooden table, sleeves rolled up, helping Felix pour batter into the pan. Hope stood on a chair, stirring the bowl with a big wooden spoon, her brown hair a tousled halo around her face. "Dad, I mean Dad." Hope corrected herself, eyes bright. "Mine's going to be the roundest one." Erin chuckled, a warm, gentle sound that made May, standing by the stove, pause. She looked at the scene so ordinary, so small, yet it filled every quiet corner of her heart. He glanced up and caught her gaze. For a breath, amid the smell of butter and the crackle of the pan, the world seemed to stop. He smiled, softly but indeed. "I've missed too much." "You're here now," she said, her voice trembling. That afternoon, when the children went out to play under the trees, Aaron stood by the window, staring at the familiar rows of oaks. The sky was clear, but inside him, a storm gathered. "I have to talk to my mother," he said quietly. May hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Yes," he said, firm. "I can't live another day letting the past stand between us." She stepped closer, resting a hand on his shoulder. "She's still your mother, Aaron. And you're the one who suffered for me," he replied. "That ends today." By late afternoon, he was driving through the oak forest en route to Mark's estate. The grand house rose before him, beautiful, stately, and cold. The iron gates creaked open with a dry sound. Inside, in the sunlit parlor, Vivian Marks sat by the window with a cup of tea. Her hair, now streaked with silver, framed a face still sharp as a blade honed by time. "You're back," she said calmly. "I knew this day would come." Aaron stopped a few feet away, his voice steady. "10 years ago, what did you say to May?" Vivian looked up, her expression unreadable. "I told her to leave you, that she would ruin you, and that I wouldn't allow it. She was pregnant," he said, his voice cracking like thunder under strain. "Did you know?" Her hand trembled as she set the teacup down. "I suspected. It wouldn't have changed anything. She didn't belong in this world." Erin gave a bitter laugh. "This world? You mean this empty house, this cold legacy, and the son who lost 10 years of his life? You're speaking from emotion," she said quietly. "And you," he answered, "have spent your whole life speaking from control." For the first time, her composure faltered. "You don't understand. I lost your father to love. He loved another woman. I had to harden myself to keep what was left of this family. I couldn't let you make the same mistake." "No, Mother." Aaron's voice was low, each word cutting through the stillness. "You didn't save anything. You only saved loneliness." And Vivian looked at him, no longer the imperious matriarch, but simply a tired mother. "Does she forgive me?" "She doesn't need to," Aaron said gently. "But you need to ask." Vivian nodded slowly. "I understand." That evening, when Aaron returned to the wooden house, moonlight sifted through the oaks, sprinkling silver across his shoulders. May opened the door. He took her hand, his voice quiet. "She knows. She's coming tomorrow." May blinked. "To do what?" "To apologize." And her breath caught a tangle of relief and disbelief. The next morning, tires crunched softly on the stone path outside. May stood on the porch, heart hammering. Inside, Felix and Hope were coloring, unaware that the woman stepping out of the grey car was the ghost of a past that had shaped their lives. Vivian Marks wore a long, ash-colored coat. She walked slowly, hands clasped around her gloves. Aaron met her halfway down the path. "Thank you for coming." "I had to," she replied. Inside, the house was still. You could hear the tick of the clock. Vivian's gaze drifted around the simplicity, the warmth, the place where her son had finally found his peace. May set a cup of tea in front of her and sit down opposite. The distance between them wasn't measured in feet, but in years and tears. Vivian was the first to speak. "You owe me nothing, May. It's I who owes you. I stole 10 years from you, and from my son, his youth." May said nothing. Vivian's voice softened. "I thought I was being strong, protecting the family, but I was only a woman afraid." May exhaled, her voice barely a whisper. "I hated you for years, but then I realized hate doesn't heal anything. You did what you thought was right." 2 tears rolled down Vivian's cheeks. She reached out, her hand trembling, and took May's. It was a small gesture, but it carried the weight of a decade. "If you'll allow it," Vivian said softly, "I'd like to meet the children." May nodded. The door to the next room opened. Hope and Felix peeked out. "Come here, kids," Aaron said gently. They approached, eyes wide. Vivian knelt, voice trembling. "I'm your grandmother." Felix tilted his head, curious. Hope blinked. "Grandma, do you like pancakes?" Vivian let out a shaky laugh through her tears. "Very much." Hope grinned. Felix smiled shyly. In that moment, 10 years of silence stitched itself back together with the laughter of two children. That afternoon, the whole family sat on the porch under the old oak trees. Sunlight spilled through the leaves, golden and warm as a blanket. Felix and Hope drew pictures on the porch steps, while Vivian told them stories of Aaron as a mischievous boy, how he once dropped her wedding cake on her birthday. Laughter rippled through the yard. May sat beside Aaron, watching them, her heart weightless. "I never thought this day would come," she said. "Neither did I," he replied. "But maybe, when love is strong enough, time is only a test." She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. The wind stirred the branches, filling the air with the soft rustle of leaves, the sound of forgiveness, of reunion, of lost things finding their way home. And the narrator's voice lowered, tender and full. Beneath the same oak trees that once witnessed their parting, laughter returned. Life can be cruel, but love, when patient enough, always finds its way back. Oh. Summer arrived early in Maplewood. Golden sunlight spilled through the wooden windows of the old cottage, stretching warm and bright across the floor. From the kitchen came the rhythm of morning, the crack of eggs, the hiss of butter melting in a pan, and the laughter of two children blending into something like music. Hope ran barefoot around the table, a sprig of lavender clutched in her hand. "Dad, Mom says we're planting sunflowers today." "Oh." Aaron looked up from his newspaper, a gentle smile tugging at his lips. "Sunflowers, huh? And who's digging the holes?" "Me." Hope raised her hand high. From the corner, Felix chuckled as he pieced together a model train. "And I'll measure the distance. It has to be even to look right." May stood by the counter, pouring coffee, watching the three of them, her heart swelling with a quiet warmth she couldn't name. The once silent house that had belonged to Aunt Edna now brimmed with life. Every morning, Aaron was there. He worked remotely, his laptop open, papers scattered, with the occasional phone call to the Marx Holdings board. But whenever Hope or Felix laughed, he closed the computer without hesitation. "Work can wait," he said. "Moments like this can't." And May believed him. They lived slowly, learning together what it meant to be a real family. At noon, they often sat on the porch while Vivian stopped by with her famous apple pie, her silver hair tied neatly behind her head. Felix was always the first to greet her, running out with his math book in hand. "Grandma, I solved the new problem." Hope would tug her toward the swing, whispering school stories. Vivian listened, eyes glistening. Each day, she softened a little more, like a dried flower finding its color again under sunlight and laughter. One June afternoon, Aaron took May back to Maplewood Station, the place she had designed 10 years before. It had been restored and now serves as a cultural center. Golden light poured over the curved glass roof, their reflections intertwined in the window. May brushed her fingers along the iron railing and smiled. "I never thought I'd see it finished like this." "It's yours," he said. "You brought it back to life, the station, and me." She shook her head, smiling softly. "No, Aaron, we brought each other back." They stood still, listening to the faint melody of a street musician nearby. Wisteria bloomed over the archways, sweet scent drifting through the breeze. "I thought I'd lost you forever," he whispered. "Even now, every morning, I have to look at you just to believe you're really here." May smiled. "I do the same." That evening, the cottage glowed with lamplight. Felix and Hope chatted around the dinner table, full of school stories. Felix said he wanted to study engineering, to build real trains. Hope said she'd be an artist, to paint the places Mom designs. Aaron listened, pride and tenderness in his eyes. May looked around the table, her voice soft. "I think we're living our dream, Aaron." He smiled, shaking his head. "No, we're living the dream that once broke, and that's why it's more beautiful now." Her tears fell not from sadness, but gratitude. She reached across the table, and he took her hand. No more words were needed. The following weeks unfolded in gentle rhythm. Aaron began shifting his company's leadership to his deputy so he could spend more time in Maplewood. Vivian changed too. She joined local charity projects, funded a new school, and smiled more often. One afternoon, she told May quietly, "I spent too many years believing family had to be protected by power. I know now it's protected by kindness." One morning, while May was sketching on the porch, Felix ran up, breathless. "Dad says there's a festival tonight, with fireworks." It was Maplewood's summer celebration, the first in years. This time, Aaron wasn't on stage as a sponsor. He was simply a father among the crowd. When fireworks burst across the sky, Hope squealed, Felix laughed, and May rested her head on Aaron's shoulder. The colors shimmered in their eyes. "I met you for the first time on a rainy summer day," she murmured. He smiled. "And now I know the best part of love isn't beginning, it's continuing." She turned to him. "Promise me no more distance, no matter what comes." He squeezed her hand. "I promise." The next morning, they sat in the garden where the new sunflowers had just begun to sprout. Tiny green shoots sprouted from the soil, reaching up toward the Sunday. "They're growing," Hope exclaimed. May brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. "Yes, because they're loved every day." Aaron watched them, his gaze soft, full. "I used to think happiness was what I achieved," he said quietly. "Now I know it's what I no longer lose." May nodded. "And what we're brave enough to forgive." Above them, the sky stretched clear and blue, the wind carrying the scent of grass and new beginnings. Aunt Edna's old cottage was no longer silent. It pulsed with the sounds of real life. Laughter, the smell of pancakes, the faint tang of paint from May's sketches, the playful arguments of two children whose world had finally found its balance. And the narrator's voice settled like sunlight through morning mist. Some loves don't need grand promises or wild declarations. They live quietly in the making of morning coffee, in a child's hand reaching for their father's, in the eyes of two people who once feared love but chose to stay. After all these years, Maplewood was finally at peace. July in Maplewood carried the kind of sunlight that melted softly over everything, golden and gentle as honey. The air smelled of cut grass and warm wood. Aaron Marx sat in the garden, holding a small velvet box, the same one he had kept in his desk drawer for 10 long years, a promise never spoken. Inside, the platinum ring still gleamed, its diamond catching the afternoon light, burning like a tiny flame. On the porch, May stood in a cream linen dress, her hair loosely tied, swaying with the breeze. Felix and Hope were tossing a ball across the yard, their laughter echoing beneath the summer sky. Aaron watched them, feeling as though his heart, after years of drifting, had finally come home. He took a deep breath, smiled to himself, and rose to his feet. He walked through rows of blooming sunflowers, their golden heads tilting toward the sun as if to witness something sacred. "May," he called softly. She turned, her brown eyes catching the light. "Why are you looking at me like that?" "I think," he said, voice unsteady, "today is the perfect day." She smiled. "Perfect for what?" "For something I've carried inside me for 10 years. Her lips parted, a breath caught in her throat. "Aaron," he opened the velvet box. The ring shimmered between them in the amber glow. "I bought this in London, the week before you disappeared," he said, his voice trembling. "For 10 years, I never dared to open it again because I didn't want to believe the chance was gone. But now I know, time doesn't take everything away. Sometimes it just waits, until we're ready." "And?" May raised a hand to her lips, tears brimming. Aaron took her hand and knelt among the sunflowers. "May Bennett," he whispered, every word a breath, "you're the one who taught me that love isn't about possession, it's about protection. I let you go once, and I swear I'll never let that happen again. Will you marry me?" She cried, bending down to touch his face, her hands trembling. "You don't have to kneel," she said through her tears. "I do," he smiled, "because I'm asking for the chance to love you for the rest of my life." Just then, Felix and Hope came running up, stopping short when they saw the scene. "Mom, what's Dad doing?" Hope asked, wide-eyed. May laughed through her tears. "He's asking me a fundamental question." "What question?" "Whether I want to stay with him here in Maplewood forever." Felix grinned. "You have to say yes, Mom." All 4 of them burst into laughter under the golden light. May nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, Aaron, I will." He stood and pulled her into his arms as the children clapped and cheered. Sunflower petals drifted through the air like golden confetti, as if the whole summer itself was blessing them. That evening, they held a small celebration in the garden. Vivian arrived carrying a white cake one she had baked herself. "This is the first cake I've made since the day my son left home," she said, her voice trembling with pride and emotion. Hope threw her arms around her grandmother. "Grandma, it smells amazing." Vivian smiled through glistening eyes. "I wanted today to be sweet in every way." As the sun sank, the whole town seemed to glow. Light spilled through the trees, gilding every face. Aaron raised his glass, his voice steady and warm. "We've lost so much to have this moment, but maybe what's precious isn't time itself, it's learning that when you love the right person, no distance is too far." May met his gaze, her eyes shining. "I used to think I was weak for leaving," she said softly, "but maybe it just made us stronger enough to understand what love really means." The last light of sunset wrapped around them. Felix and Hope ran laughing through the garden while Vivian quietly wiped her tears, smiling as she watched her son's happiness unfold. The wedding came not long after, on a crisp autumn afternoon. Not in a grand church or glittering hall, but at Maplewood Station, the place where everything began. The station was adorned with wildflowers, strings of golden lights, and photographs from the town's history. Friends, neighbors, and even those who had only known Aaron from the newspapers came to witness it. Everyone said the same thing: "This might be the most beautiful story Maplewood has ever had." May walked down an aisle lined with sunflowers. Felix and Hope went ahead, scattering petals as they walked. Aaron stood waiting at the end, eyes fixed on her just as he had that first day in the old cafe. "You're beautiful," he whispered when she reached him. She smiled. "And you're still the man who makes me believe in fate." The officiant spoke. "Aaron Marx, do you promise to love, honor, and protect this woman through sunshine and storm alike?" Aaron's eyes glowed steadily. "I do." "And you, May Bennett, do you promise to love this man, to share with him every joy and sorrow for all your days?" Her voice trembled but firmed with love. "I do." When the music rose, Aaron leaned in and kissed her, not as lovers reunited, but as two souls who had weathered every storm and come home again. Applause filled the station. Hope hugged their legs. Felix laughed out loud. Vivian wiped her tears, whispering, "I've never seen Maplewood look so beautiful." That night, the station lights glowed beneath its splendid dome, warm as the glow of starlight. Aaron and May sat together on the old wooden bench where they'd once shared their first cup of coffee. May rested her head on his shoulder. "I used to dream of this moment," she whispered, "but I never thought it would be real." "And now it is," he said, pressing a kiss to her hair. From afar, the night train's whistle rose long, low, and tender. May smiled. "Listen, Maplewood is blessing us." Aaron tightened his hold on her, eyes distant but peaceful. "Not just Maplewood, even the last 10 years are smiling tonight," and the narrator's voice softened, slow and luminous as the final breath of dusk. After all the loss, they didn't just find each other again, they found themselves. Because some loves, no matter how long they sleep or how deep they're buried, only wait for one sunset to rise and say, "I still choose you," just like the first time. And the following summer, Maplewood glowed beneath golden sunlight. Behind the old cottage, a sea of sunflowers stretched to the horizon, their petals blazing like waves of light. The breeze carried the scent of honey and warm earth, brushing past the porch where 4 people sat together for breakfast. Felix was now 10, his green eyes sparkling every time he spoke of his latest invention, a miniature steam train powered by solar energy. Hope sat beside him, bent over a drawing titled, "Our Home in Maplewood," complete with red roof tiles, a garden of golden blooms, and a sky filled with swallows. May poured more tea for Aaron, smiling. "Do you see it? They're just like you, one obsessed with structure, the other in love with details." Aaron raised a brow, pretending to be serious. "I think they're like their mother, one brave, one who knows how to dream." They both laughed, their voices mingling with the morning sun, dissolving into the gentle air of peace. In that moment, no one spoke of the past. No more than 10 years lost, no tears, no unfinished promises. Only the present filled with the smell of pancakes, the scratch of pencils on paper, and 2 hands intertwined, hands that once lost each other, now holding fast. That afternoon, the The family visited Maplewood Station, the place that had witnessed every beginning. Now covered in vines, its windows flung open to the light, the old building had become the town's cultural center. In the main hall hung a large painting titled, The Return. They said it was the masterpiece of Hope Bennett Marx, her vision of the sunset where her parents had once exchanged their vows. She stood gazing up at it, eyes bright. I painted it so no one would forget that true love can come back, right, Mom? May nodded, resting a hand on her daughter's shoulder. That's right, because without that truth, you and Felix wouldn't even be here. Felix grinned and pointed upstairs, where his solar-powered steam train was displayed in the Future of Maplewood exhibit. Aaron put an arm around his son's shoulders, half teasing. Looks like the future of the Marx company might be standing right here. Felix shook his head, eyes shining. I don't want to run a company. I want to build things that make people smile. Aaron smiled softly. Then you already understand what it took me a lifetime to learn. At sunset, they stepped out to the platform, where the barley fields rippled gold in the wind. Vivian arrived, carrying a basket of pastries. She had grown older, her hair now silver, but her eyes had never been kinder. Hope ran to hug her, while Felix helped her to the wooden bench. Vivian looked at her son, her daughter-in-law, her two grandchildren, her eyes glistening. Maybe this, she said softly, is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Not the mansions, not the charities, this. Aaron squeezed her hand. I think so too. May smiled, her voice warm as sunlight. You gave us a chance to forgive. Now it's our turn to give each other a chance to be happy. Vivian nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. That's enough, May. That's all I ever needed. When night fell, summer fireworks burst above Maplewood. The family sat together on the grass in front of the old station. Hope rested her head on her mother's shoulder. Mom, when will we travel again? May smiled. Maybe soon. But no matter where we go, Maplewood will always be home. Aaron wrapped his arm around her. Because home isn't where we live, it's where we find peace. Felix pointed at the sky. Look, a heart-shaped firework. Hope giggled. It's just like you and Dad. Lent. They all laughed together, their joy rising with the sound of summer, bright, complete, and whole. And the narrator's voice softened, gentle as the night air. There are stories that don't truly end. They simply turn into the quiet rhythm of everyday life. Aaron and May had gone full circle to return home, carrying with them 2 children and the scars that had turned into love. Maplewood remained with its old station, its oak trees, and the soft rain of early autumn, a witness to one simple truth. True love, no matter how lost, always finds its way home. 10 years, 1 letter. A love thought gone forever found again, not to begin anew, but to continue where the heart had once stopped. Because sometimes, forgiveness is the only way home. Thank you for walking with me through the story of The Return to Maplewood. If this tale brought you even a little warmth or peace, leave a below to let me know you still believe in love stories like this. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so more hearts can hear The Return to Maplewood, and so I'll have the strength to tell more love stories from across America. See you in the next one where, once again, love will find its way back.